Okay, today I'm going to talk to you about displacement reactions. A displacement reaction is when a more reactive element takes the place of a less reactive element. We're going to have a look at an example right here. So let's imagine that this is a solution in a test tube or a boiling tube of copper sulfate. And what we have here is we have an iron nail. So I've put in the iron nail into copper sulfate to see if there's going to be some kind of reaction. So let's just write out this word equation to begin with. So I've got copper sulfate and I'm added that to iron. Now, in order to see if a reaction is going to take place, I need to have a look at the reactivity series. So if you remember, the reactivity series just has the most reactive elements near the top and the least reactive elements near the bottom. So the two things I'm going to be looking at is comparing copper to iron. So there is iron and there is copper. So because iron is closer to the top, it is more reactive than copper. So what is going to happen is the iron is going to displace the copper. Means it takes its place. So like this. Now what we're left with is going to be this. Because the iron has displaced, got rid of the copper, kicked it out, we now have iron sulfate. So that's the name of the salt that is produced, iron sulfate. But our copper is now all by itself. So it's iron sulfate plus copper. This is a displacement reaction. The more reactive element has replaced the less reactive one. Just going to quickly do the word equation underneath, just so we have it in both forms. Plus Fe goes to iron sulfate plus copper. Okay, now let's have a look at a different example. Let's imagine now we had zinc sulfate instead of copper sulfate. And this time, let's imagine we reacted it with copper. So let's have a little look at the reactivity series to see if there's going to be a reaction. So remember, the most reactive metals, so I'll just move that across, the most reactive metals are nearer the top. So if we're comparing zinc with copper, we can see that zinc is more reactive than copper because it's further that way. As a result, copper cannot displace the zinc. It's not reactive enough. It's less reactive than zinc. So if I added copper to zinc sulfate, there would be absolutely no reaction. It's not reactive enough. Similarly, if I had copper sulfate, let's imagine I've got copper sulfate, like in the first example, but I added copper to it, because they have the same reactivity, obviously it's the same element, because it's the same reactivity, again, we would also see no reaction as well. So in order for a displacement reaction to take place, we must have a more reactive element, such as iron reacting with a less reactive element like copper. So these two would be a good example. And that is just how displacement reactions work. They're an example of a redox reaction. And if you'd like to learn more about redox reactions, please watch the video about redox reactions. Thank you very much.